All right, no screwing around. Welcome to the live stream, folks. Welcome to 2020. Happy New Year, everybody, all around the world, and those yet to celebrate it. Happy New Year before it happens. And tons of stuff going on. We see a sunspot 2755, likely to get named today, and all kinds of other interesting stories all around the place. Let's take a look at some stuff here. Here's the current map of what's going on, and it's 5:19 local time where I am. And there's the line between 2019 and 2020. It's getting narrow, and pretty soon it's only going to be Howland Island and some other little island out here in the middle of nowhere by the international date line. And also American Samoa, one of the last places to see New Year happen. And let's take a look at the sun here on the GOES X-ray imager to see rising sunspot 2755. You can see toward the end of the image here, right there at the end, you see the bright spot in the lower left portion there. We call that the southeast portion of the solar disk. See a little bit of X-ray activity rising up there, and you see the date stamps starting out the year with a sunspot. It looks like it's going to be the scenario. Now, we couldn't get the SDO browse images to work right, so we're looking at the 48-hour view here in 94 angstroms. And you can see that bright region rising right there where my pointer is. Great view of that at the end of the movie. I'll let that play through a second time. And we'll go through momentarily here and look at a different view. 304 angstroms. And I'll let that load to make sure we get the most current view. There you go. And note the date stamps. And there's 2020 starting out the year with a sunspot, folks. Let me just go back one quick moment here, show you the colorized magnetogram. And we do see umbra associated with that. Stay tuned to the end of the video and we'll show you. First, let's look at the LASCO C2. And we do see a little bit of ejecta going out of the west side of the disk in this area once again. Nothing Earth-facing happening. And I'll let that play through and move on to more data. But not to more Geordie LaForge. And there's the latest data from LASCO C2. It doesn't look like it's returning data from the year 2020 yet. And thanks to everybody viewing on Twitch. Shout out. By the way, for those not viewing on Twitch, please understand that we stream the videos live at the current juncture, and then we upload them later. Here's the view from HelioViewer of that rising sunspot, and again, we do see umbra there. We're just going to show you the fields and the 171 angstroms view. There's the fade out to the fields, and again, stay tuned to the end. We'll show you the umbra in close-up detail. By the way, if you haven't checked out smAsho yet, check out smAsho, scroll down, click on the new link, which will have a graphical link for that shortly, and head to the Smash forum. Perhaps set yourself up a login so you can post and talk about everything from coffee to Honey, I Shrunk Your Soul and transmuted elements and cosmic toolboxes and all kinds of stuff like that. Let's get back to solar data before I continue plugging things. GOES X-ray flux is still quite flatlined there. No X-rays out of that sunspot yet, but it looks like it's a significantly sized sunspot and it's quite far off of the equator. 10.7 centimeter radial flux has dropped down to 71, and we appear to be remaining at 71 for that. for the current time. Don't be surprised if you see that rise. KP index at 0 for the last 9 hours. And we're going to skip cosmic rays today, but if you'd like to monitor them, check out the links in the description below the video. Links to the cosmic ray stations always included. The cosmic ray station site there with all the links to Athens and Apatity and Barentsburg and Mexico City and Moscow and so on. Current phi angle and the solar wind data, looking at the real-time solar wind from the Discover spacecraft. And that is phi angle of 300 or so degrees. Solar wind density 3.5, solar wind speed quite low still, 329, despite a slight boost. Looks like a very weak coronal hole wind stream showed up. Not enough to do very much to any of that data. ACE agrees. Just a pretty weak sputtering stream, bringing it up from below. It looks like it was all the way down as low as 280 there. Let's see how low it got. 287? That's an awfully low. That's just a little glitchy spot there, but it looks like it was steady at below 300 kilometers per second there. And again, there's the data from ACE. Electron flux is totally flatlined, and we don't expect this to rise very much for reasons that shall remain undisclosed. Relativistic electrons are at a low level also. Don't expect a lot of GPS errors, although we do see a very anomalous ionosphere once again. The entire South Pacific is having odd charge-up anomalies. We've been watching it for quite a while, a solid month and a half. And it looks like some data anomalies here also east of South America, where we see ionosphere lines lining up right on the prime meridian there and making no sense, as that's not typically how magnetohydrodynamic shells work. In any case, there's the data from that, looking anomalous once again over the South Pacific. Last frame is at 10 o'clock UT. There's the GOES magnetometer data, looking fairly smooth. Gong 2 is not sending back data. We tried to load the newest, and it's showing us 10.5-hour-old data there. So for whatever reason, we don't really see any significant implications of that sunspot forming on there, and it's old data. So here's the magnetosphere. And looking at the magnetohydrodynamic pressure there, it's looking quite weak, and no surprise, as we've had a sustained weak solar wind. You can see some double layer shells forming and dissolving there. As we know, Van Allen belts increase in number as the pressure increases, it seems. As there are repulsive forces out there as well as attractive forces, and we won't get into it today. We'll save that for another video, but there's 4 hours of data. And you can see the way the shells are retracting and so on. Space weather modeling framework is based on a lot of stuff and not a lot of nonsense. Here's 4 hours of data of the geospace delta V. Changes in the Earth's B field. And we see some pulses there, especially in the South Pole. Those are purely magnetic, I would assume, as the solar wind isn't inducing much of anything. Anyway, there's the data on that. Welcome to the magnetic excursion and to 2020. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. It's quite lonely on this side of the solar system. The Earth's the only planet over here. And there's where stuff will be in a week, God willing. Check out in-the-sky.org if you want to check out a sky chart for yourself. Just come up here, click on charts, click on all sky charts, and then put in your location or somewhere where you want to know what the stars are looking like. And if you got a low horizon, go out and take a shot of Mars. If you've got a telescope or something like that, we'll feature the content. Send us an email, smashomash@gmail.com. Earthquake rundown for the past 24 hours. includes no 6+ magnitude quakes as far as I know. Let's scroll up the list real slow like for everybody to see if this is your thing. Now, I'm not the hugest geology expert or anything, much less geography expert. We do see a deep quake at Alaska. Otherwise, things are looking fairly relaxed as far as earthquake activity right now. And just scrolling. There's a deep one at Japan at 4.4 magnitude, 317 kilometers depth. A 4.4 magnitude in Indonesia at 151 kilometers depth. Here's one allegedly exactly at the surface at Volcano, Hawaii, and that's the town of Volcano. It's not referring to a geologic structure of a volcano, but a town. And let's look at, what are we looking at? We're looking at Mount Etna, because guess what? It's back on the volcano list. Check out the lenticular clouds over Mount Etna. That one coming in just 4 minutes ago. And we've seen some eruptions out of Mount Etna. And we put a heart on it on windy.com. Let's look at the pressure maps as we typically always do. Assuming everything works according to plan, we're going to zoom way out. The webcams are pretty cool on windy.com. You may want to disable it depending on things like bandwidth and your patience. Anyway, there's where pressure is starting out the year and indeed the decade. Now a powerful low over the Central Pacific. I mean a powerful high over the Central Pacific, that is. Just east of Kamchatka. And a large low over all of Canada. Let's just advance it and have a sip of club soda and not dwell on it. We'll let it go about 24 hours in. This is the GFS forecast, as you can see in the upper right. It looks like the low over eastern Alaska is going to remain persistent. And there's where things will be in about 24 hours. It's 5:31 a.m. And that's Eastern time. And please give me back control. Thank you. Were you aware that resisting tyranny is obeying God? Just to quote Thomas Jefferson. So just saying, just throwing it in there. Resisting tyranny is obeying God. Anyway, Mount Etna is erupting, which is why we put a heart on it. Explosive activity at the summit, but no ash cloud produced. Perhaps outgassing, perhaps collapsing. Who knows what's going on? Mount Abico also on the list. 9,000-foot ash plume there. Mount Aso, flight level 6,000. Krakatoa still erupting. That's a scary one. Flight level 8,000 there. Dacono erupting. 7,000-foot ash plume there. Popocatépetl back to exploding. 24,000-foot ash plume. Oh, so close to Mexico City. Not sure about Sabancaya, but Revenador is exploding, producing a 15,000-foot ash plume. Please don't fly your home-built ultralight aircraft or hang glider over Revenador's caldera. And we're only 5 hours and 32 minutes into New Year's. Do you have resolutions? Please leave us a comment. Happy New Year, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We've got plenty more features coming up. And this page right here, I promise you, is going to load. YouTube.com/smAsho. If you enjoy the content, please press like and subscribe. And also look for us in other places, such as BitChute. We make sure our videos are there, using torrent technology to make it very convenient. Also on Minds.com, the social media where you won't be censored, etc. Enough said about that. That's Minds.com, MINDS.com/smAsho. Also, we're looking at the lightning here. Let's get back into some weather phenomenon. checking out some lightning in the north central Atlantic there. Otherwise, fairly calm as far as lightning goes. And let's check out the jet streams. There's the jet streams on Null Skull. We see some big bends over the northern Pacific, pulling some very cold air down to the west coast of Alaska, it looks like. And the warm air trend has ended largely in my location. We're right on the demarcation line where it's going to be warmer and warmer as you head south down the east coast of the U.S. Here is the eastern world jet streams. And let's look at the U.S. Doppler radar here. And it looks like I could get snowed on today a little bit. Bring it on. As long as it ain't rain, I'm all for it. And it looks very wet in the northwesternmost portion of the country, as well as a bunch of Great Lakes snow, as well as New England getting a little peppered, and some ice in Montana and North Dakota. Here's a U.S. water vapor map. By the way, we use, for you new viewers out there, we use the GOES interactive weather satellite. We use the water vapor map because it shows us water that isn't even condensed onto clouds. It shows us all the water up there. And we've got a convergence over the Texas stovepipe. Let's take a look at that real quick. Near the Colorado border. Near the Oklahoma Panhandle and so on. Check out the parallel lines there. And you need the right atmospheric mix to really observe this stuff, but we got a perfect one right there. As that terrain is largely flat, but kind of at a significant altitude. Check out the parallel lines. And note how they're perpendicular to the mode of travel of the water vapor, which in that area is shown as the darker colors there, as this is the real dry area. Great example of Hall currents in the atmosphere. If you haven't seen it, congratulations. By the way, if you enjoy the content and you'd like to help support the channel, and we need lots more support, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/smAsho, the real source of funding for the videos. And thanks Smash Team for tuning in. Don't forget to leave a comment, etc. And welcome to the That is an Ass and That is a Hole in the Ground, the vulgarity-free section where we talk about things like pack animals and giant sinkholes in Asia somewhere. I don't remember exactly where that's from, but I don't think that's Photoshop, folks. And I don't even think I'd be standing that close. I may be running for my lives, as that could be a gateway to hell. In 2020, please don't get too close to any gateways to hell. By the way, we've left links to our Happy New Year GIF animation. If anybody'd like to share it, please do so on our behalf. Let's talk about what went on in the 2010s. And I'm not really going to get into this wiki article, but I will put a link below the video if you want to read all about it. Everything from assassinations and attempts to disasters to health epidemics and science and technology. And there are certain stuff that, of course, I'm very interested in talking about regarding the 2010s. And that is mainly the addition of new tools to the Cosmic Toolbox. One of those tools is going to be our t-shirts. We're going to roll out merch regardless of how many subscribers we happen to have or not have on YouTube. And that's going to be the design. I know it's black on black, but there's a reason for it, folks. We're showing a radio image of Cygnus A, similar to the now famous radio source M87, the black hole that was photographed. Anyway, here's the design. This is what it looks like in full res. And look for that coming soon, early in 2020. Let's talk about some crazy statistics. And they're all cited in this Zero Hedge article, so if you don't believe any of them, check it out. According to a Gallup poll that was just released, Barack Obama and Donald Trump both came in tied for the most admired man in America. They both got 18% of the survey, and no other man had more than 2%. Number 2, at 10%, Michelle Obama topped the list for most admired woman in America. No reference to what the rest of that poll said, and I'm not clicking on it. Global stocks have increased by more than $25 trillion in the past 10 years. It's a bubble. A giant bubble. In the U.S., 84% of all stocks are owned by the wealthiest 10% of Americans, which is not surprising considering billionaires typically run the boards of multi-billion-dollar multinational companies. The U.S. government is now more than $23 trillion in debt. Check out debtclock.org if you don't believe me and watch the numbers roll. I think it comes out to about $107,000 per taxpayer, but don't quote me on it. Did you know that George W. Bush doubled the national debt during his time in office, and then Obama doubled the national debt on his term in office, and Trump is on the way to doubling the national debt during his term in office? I don't know if you're aware. Over the past 12 months, we've added another $1.1 trillion. That's just in the past 12 months, folks. Global debt has now reached the $188 trillion mark, and that is the point in my mind where debt becomes incoherent. The $188 trillion mark. That means that banks own more assets than the entire world. So the world is not enough, but it is such a perfect place to start owning more than what even exists. They call it inflation, folks, and a lot of people think a lot of things are more important than they really are. Anyway, to continue on, there's a lot of bad economic indicators, like out-of-control debt. So just saying financial institutions might be under the gun a little bit. Did you know that if you're an American woman, there's a 1 in 3 chance you'll get cancer at some point? Did you know if you're an American man, there's a 1 in 2 chance you'll get cancer at some point? Flip a coin. Did you know that over the past decade, the suicide rate among young Americans has risen by 56%? There are some health problems, folks. Let's talk about good news. What happened just very recently in the past year to 10 years. New tools in the cosmic toolbox. So, and what are they? Well, there are a couple things. And not sure if anyone is more important than the other one. We're not even going to go into the possibility of a fundamental new particle, the X17. We're only going to talk about a little bit more verified stuff, although the X17 does seem like it's a real thing. Were you aware the sun looks like this if you look at it from the North Pole? Now, of course, this is clipping out the corona, so if you included the corona, there would be a big fiery-looking aura around it with a real irregular shape to it. But just looking at the visible part of the disk, the part that stays round, that's what the sun looks like from the North Pole. A satellite flew around and took a composite image of it, and somebody animated it, and that's brilliant. Just for the record, please understand that there is a persistent coronal hole right there, which is what you're looking at, which means there's a persistent proton beam, probably in a cone shape, and probably an electron beam coming out of and going into the sun at that location. Now, let's not dwell on that either. Let's talk about one of the new tools in the cosmic toolbox. Sapphire Project is one of the organizations who's proven that elements get transmuted in these double layers. These double layer plasma shells, heavy elements get created there. And the implications are that for cosmology, that's a new tool in the toolbox. In other words, we don't need weird stars that build up shells inside of them through internal fusion that eventually explode to have heavy elements. Heavy elements can be made simply in these plasma double layers. Let's talk about an even more important thing, or a similarly important thing at least, the Parker Solar Probe. Now, this is already showing us data indicating that magnetic fields are running the galaxy, or at least the solar system. And without getting too in-depth into that either, there's going to be a lot more stuff about the Parker Solar Probe coming out in the next year. So that's one of the great things that happened in 2019 is the data dump. The data dump on the Parker Solar Probe. Super stoked about it. Look for lots more stuff coming out about this Parker Solar Probe. Links to all of these sites shall be below the video. Talk about Betelgeuse, something that is quite odd, actually. Concerns that Betelgeuse may go supernova, as it has been dimming to the dimmest level seen in over a century. Now, this is a giant red supergiant. It would be just a little bit smaller than Jupiter's orbit, we think, if it was in the solar system. And the distance to the object is rather disputed, as there are problems associated with measuring things beyond a certain distance, and it's kind of around that distance. But in any case, the dimming of Betelgeuse is super important. And let's just say, since all stars are variable stars, we shouldn't get too excited when we see stars do things that fall outside of the standard cosmic model, where gravity and internal nuclear fusion dynamos govern stellar life cycles. Links to that video also. Let's talk about something super important. The way glass beads stuck together because of polarization when in microgravity. People have been trying to figure out how things accrete. How do planets form? How do they stick together? Well, it turns out that polarization may be the answer. And we covered this article a few times because it's super important for astrophysics. I'm not exactly sure how many of you understand this yet, but it doesn't appear that gravity is the main force that causes things to behave the way that they do in the universe. We lack cosmic tools in the cosmic toolbox. Just suggesting that, oh, just inertia and gravity govern the motion of galaxies and planets and stars does not answer how these things behave the way that they behave. So we've left links to this article here about the way these glass beads seem to stick together as a result of polarization, published on December 10th. We covered it on December 10th. And a couple other times since then, because it's one of the most interesting stories in science in a long time. And we've been saying for a long time that, hey, you know, physics, astrophysics, cosmology are being rewritten. We're not kidding. It's serious, which is why we started a nonprofit organization. I would have done so otherwise, but the timing was right. Now, let's check out some stocks a little bit here. Here's the S&P 500, which is a measure of the largest 500 stocks in the U.S. And does that look a little bit inflated to you folks? I'm not saying buy or don't buy, but just consider the run-up. That's a one-year chart. Here's the all-data chart. There's the all-data chart, folks. I'm not going to say whether that looks grim or not, but what goes up, man, oh man. Let's look at the NASDAQ also, as the Dow Jones is just the 20 largest stocks. Here's the NASDAQ, which is the tech bubble, sector. And there's NASDAQ. Looks almost identical to the S&P, as the U.S. stock market is heavily tech-based. And congratulations to Netflix, who has increased their stock value 3,600% since the decade began. Well, since last decade began. So over the past 10 years, Netflix is the winner as far as stock prices going up. Let's look at crypto real quick. I'm going to look at Bitcoin on the Coinbase exchange, as these have been heavily beaten up lately. Here's the one-year chart of Bitcoin. Looking flat and unhealthy, if you ask me. Doesn't look like a Head and Shoulders recovery. It looks like a beatdown. Similar to the way it looked up here. So not looking hopeful for Bitcoin in my opinion. Here's Ethereum on the Coinbase, although it is a buying opportunity if you want a dollar cost average. Here's Ethereum, and it's looking similarly beaten up. And I would say similar to silver versus gold, a little bit less inflated. Speaking of silver and gold, here's where gold currently is at $15.20 an ounce. That's $1,520 per ounce, and it's at about a 6-year high, I believe. I won't show any other charts of that, but let's just say at the last financial crisis, gold spiked quite high. Silver spiked at about $50 at the last financial crisis. I was telling our viewers to buy it when it was below $14 an ounce. It's now at $17.90, and it still looks undervalued to me, especially with respect to the currency markets, and especially with respect to the U.S. stock market. It did spike all the way up to, oh geez, I don't know, 1950 in September, but yeah. Anyway, that's silver. And what happened? I got a white screen. Shout out to Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers. Now, a lot of our viewers probably watch Suspicious Observers and are delighted to see the levels of censorship that happen on places like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and so on. In any case, shout out to Ben Davidson, and we just wanted to cite a couple of examples of local scenery in which Ben might be interested in, and perhaps the viewers over there. So we've brought up some websites here for some interesting locations, such as Crystal Cave. Now, if you've ever been to Crystal Cave, it is absolutely breathtaking. The rock fixtures in there and so on. Of course, I went there on a school field trip because it's so close to where I went to elementary school. That, of course, we went on a school field trip there, and I'll tell you what, it is out of hand. There are areas where you can't even get any place near the walls of the rooms because if you just touch any of the crystals, they'll just fall apart. It is out of control. Entire rooms are just like giant geodes. You won't believe it if you check out Crystal Cave. We've left links to that in the description. And also, this one brought up by Granddad. Shout out to Granddad, aka Bob Carson, who was, he was at the Sterling Hill Mining Museum when it was still an active mine. And anyway, there's a museum here in New Jersey, if you'd like to check that one out. It's another underground location and a nonprofit organization. They've got phosphorescent rocks that'll blow your mind. And I believe this is where a rock fell on his foot. Don't quote me on that, folks. But I think Granddad may have had a rock fall on his foot from here. And I think it was one of those phosphorescent rocks. They followed the phosphorescent rocks to find the zinc. And what say you about electric universe theory? The way everything's in veins, you think that's a mystery? Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, folks. We've got new and improved cosmic toolbox tools. Not to mention, things like the electric force, Hall currents, and stuff like that. And again, please consider becoming a patron if you haven't already done so. And thanks to our latest patrons. We appreciate the support. Look for more exclusive content coming out regularly. And if you enjoy the content on YouTube, please press like and subscribe. We'll still have some free content there, and we won't leave you entirely in the dark, YouTube viewers. And thanks those of you who view on Twitch Live. Cheers. Sorry I can't really get the comments today. Good time for tax cuts. Good time for shrinking the government, folks. Shrink the government. We want the government to do less things. So, which is why we're becoming a tax-deductible organization, right? The donations shall become tax-deductible. We will get the nonprofit organization paperwork filed soon. Thanks again, Smash team. Happy New Year, everybody. It's almost late enough now where it's New Year's everywhere. It probably kicked down in Alaska as we were doing the show. I'm not sure how many time zones are there. I forget. I used to talk to people on the phone and sell them insurance from Pennsylvania to Alaska. And in any case, we got a bonus feature for you here, and we're going to show you the Umbra of soon-to-be-named Sunspot 2755. And there you can see it's not even very Earth-facing yet, but it's still an obvious Umbra. And let's just take a look at the 304 angstroms 48-hour video once again before we close this thing out. Anyway, Happy New Year, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, don't drink, or do whatever you want, actually. Just don't drive. Just whatever you do, but don't drive. You know, statistics. And since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back and that atherosclerosis absent from your veins. Exiting Smash Tower.